I think we can start.
Okay.
And I will quickly repeat the 4 topics I want to discuss about, okay? The first topic is that I love to know your parents' experience as first generation immigrants in America. The second topic is that how's your high school life looks like, because my high school is back in China, so I'm curious about how your high school looks like. The third one is that how the college life looks like, right? You already been here for almost 3 years, so get some sense. The next one is your goal to be a politician. I don't have too many friends who want to become a politician, so I'm curious to know more about that. The next one is your understanding about Christianity. I think that's a very interesting topic for me, because I grew up in a non-religious environment. So I love to how it looks like for you. Then the next one is a topic I'm learning is your understanding about love, romantic relationship, and marriage at the end.
Yeah, that's a good finale.
Yeah, and the last question is your understanding about AI. I know you are not a computer science major,
but I do use it.
You use it, and everyone is talking about it, right? Even if you become a politician, today the politicians are also talk about AI, how they reshape, the whole society. It sounds good?
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Okay, cool. So the first specific question and the first topic is that how's your parents' home country looks like? Yeah.
Well, my parents are from El Salvador, and a lot of people assume that it's like Mexico. And I think like that is a very natural assumption when
it's in South America?
Central America.
Central America.
Yeah. So it's right in between. And one thing that's really interesting for them, at least, is the way in which their culture shaped their community here. I don't know. I think like when I think of their home country, because I've never been, I will go eventually.
So in the more than past 20 years.
Yeah, they have. My mother has not gone home. She's been here for about 20 years. Yeah.
She has been here for 20 years and she has never. How about your grandparents?
Well, my grandparents are still alive, at least on my mother's side. They're still alive, and
which means that your mom hasn't
like physically like been in the room with them for 20 years. Yeah, which is a little heartbreaking, you think.
I can imagine, especially your mom from maybe her 20s,
right,
to her
40s, 21, I believe.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and
my dad came here in 19.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Have your dad get a chance to go back and saw his?
Yes, my dad went back 2020, either 2020 or 2021, but
around the COVID time.
Yeah, around the COVID, or a little bit after. My grandmother on my dad's side died, right, and that gave him a chance to go back to the United States, or to El Salvador, sorry. And I think like one thing that he shared with me is that it's definitely not the same. I think like the country has changed a lot in
20 years.
20 years.
Well, it's huge change, I can imagine.
Definitely, like it's not the way in which he would describe El Salvador to me, in the way he grew up. He grew up in the 80s and 90s, right? El Salvador was just coming out of a civil war. It was very like heavy. Everyone was really experiencing like poverty and just like really awful conditions and stuff.
I can imagine. In a country in a war,
right?
It won't be very well off. Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, but I think like the way in which my dad has described El Salvador to me is that it's a happy place, although it's very poor and definitely like at those points in time very underdeveloped. I think like there was a lot of community there. I think a lot of good community with people, and I think like my dad would always retell his experiences in school and just like how much joy he had with the people. I think like there's a big difference over there versus over here, at least like culturally, and how people get along. They're more lively, more expressive, more excited in certain aspects. But I think like the way in which El Salvador can be described. It's a very like the people there are very calm, but they're equally as passionate. You know.
So which means that although the life there is more poor, of course, much
Right.
poor. Well, most countries is poorer than America if you think about the. But
Yeah.
I think that people still have a lot of joy from their normal life, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the cultural differences, he would tell me. He'd be like, "Oh, son, we light up fireworks on Christmas, or we party like a lot." And
I'm curious about what kind of party they have. Maybe very different.
crazy.
No, maybe
Well-
not like America.
I think like the difference lies in how the music and the way people express themselves is very warm, I would say. I think a typical Hispanic party, at least like from what I've experienced at home, is kind of like an
Can I
American.
speak Spanish?
Me?
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yo puedo hablar en español.
What does that mean?
I can speak Spanish.
Nice.
Es mi amigo Barack.
Okay, nice.
See, but yeah, I don't know. Like it's just loud music, good food, always people coming in and greeting each other. And it's never like a formal like
Yeah,
hi, how are you doing, Barack? No, it's just what's up, man? ¿Qué
it's
tal,
like
amigo?
it's like California, like some southern states.
Yeah.
Feel that.
Yeah.
Seattle is very different.
Oh, Seattle's like cold. Everyone's just
Seattle freezing, right? Everyone is decent, right?
yes. Yeah. But and what's really interesting? It's like even like the way in which culturally being here for so long changes you. I think like those aspects still kind of never go away.
I think that the culture
Yeah.
where you grew up as, especially before you 18 years old, 20 years old, something
Right.
like that, hugely change. Even if it's future, you move to a new country,
Mhm.
live there for decades,
Right.
right? Your dad, your parents live here maybe more than living their home country.
Right.
But I still believe that it's the influence
Oh yeah.
is far more, maybe will last for
It's
their whole
integral.
life.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
my dad's perseverance. I think I take a lot of
Mhm.
attributes in that from him, but I can tell that his ability to persevere amid really tough circumstances, I think that's rubbed on me a
Yeah.
lot.
I can imagine
Mhm.
because a person who can go through the wartime
Well, he was a very young boy, like 5, 6. So
when the war happened.
kind of when it happened and it ended, because
How long it lasted for the Civil War?
I think around like early 70s, ends around like the mid 80s or early 80s.
Got you.
And he was born 1980, so he
Gotcha.
didn't experience too much. But what he did experience was like the aftermath, the reconstruction of the country.
Got you. He didn't directly go through that.
But my grandpa uncle, so my granddad's brother or step granddad. Well, it's interesting. My granddad's uncle served in the El Salvadorian military. My real granddad, my blood granddad, served in the military and died. And my dad had, well, a new stepdad, grandpa, and his extended family also served in the El Salvadorian military. And it's really interesting. My uncle was a police officer, and then my auntie's husband is a police officer as well. And it's really interesting. I have no.
You have a family tradition to serve in the government.
I never really thought about that.
Right.
And
Maybe that kind of influence your passion to become politician.
perhaps it's in the blood.
Yeah, maybe. Right. I feel that's very interesting. When I was in high school, I always say, okay, I want to serve in the army, serve in the military at least for 2 years, something like that. But my parents disagree. They think they feel it's dangerous. So I never get a chance to serve in the military. But but I can see your family tradition here.
Yeah. But I will say though that I think like a lot of it has to do with just like job opportunity. I think it's very hard to get a decent like job provided by like private companies and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but I
yeah.
will say though that like serving in some parts of my family is very strong. I think in my dad's family it's just something very ingrained in a gift. I think like
Yeah.
kind of going back to what I believe, kind of thinking about God and stuff. I think like he gives families certain gifts, and I think he's gifted my family with a very warm heart, a very serving heart, and so I'm very grateful that I get to
Gotcha.
experience that, because I don't think very many people can say that like my family members are giving. They are giving
Yeah.
types of people.
Yeah. I remember that there's quotations. Don't ask what you have done. Right? Don't ask what the country have done for you.
What can
ask what you can do for the country.
Yeah.
Which president?
JFK.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah, I watched so many speeches. Yeah, so you need to become a good, public speaker to become a good politician, kind of.
I feel like it's very integral.
Right. Yeah, I think that the next question I'm curious about is that, your parents as the first generation immigrants, I believe they must have faced a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Based on your impression, based on your understanding, what's the biggest or what's some of the biggest challenges for them in the past 2 decades?
You know what's really interesting? I've seen my parents transition from unhealthy lifestyle to healthy lifestyle.
What do you mean by this unhealthy?
Well, I think in my life, there was a lot of like excessive vices, like alcoholism, depression, just kind of immaturity, and I've seen my parents grow from that, right? But I think like seeing their struggles, their main struggles, the hardest thing that I would say for them was not necessarily finding a job or not necessarily getting money, although hard, extremely hard, especially when you don't speak English, you don't have a degree.
Yeah. But
I think it's really like the ability to conquer the emotion of fear. Like I think that is so integral that they managed to overcome a lot of it. Because what I've seen in a lot of other Hispanic families, I grew up with a lot of different cultures, like Honduranians, Mexicans, like all sorts of people.
So your community, the community you grew up, is very diverse.
Oh yes, diverse in some Latin way, and fear is there. Fear is so just ingrained in a lot of what people do. And I can see from my parents, like from seeing my parents grow from fear, not from choosing to live a life of fear, but choosing a life to seek opportunity rather than think, it's impossible, or whatever. But
yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic, is a fear. Even just when we have dinner, we talk about this quote again. I think from some president, the only thing to fear is fear itself. To be more specific, you think what's the reason that fear came from?
Well, I think like contextually, like thinking back, like how my parents came here, they're just young, like babies, I'd say, and they never ever had been exposed to like American culture, American people. Very.
Do you think they are ambitious people?
American people, or
no? I mean, your parents, are they ambitious?
Absolutely, and I think my mother is way more ambitious than my father.
That's very interesting.
But the really interesting thing is that although I feel as if my mother is very ambitious, my father is the one who takes a lot of action.
Well, so which means that maybe your father, your dad, is a person who is more practical, right? Although he may not talk a lot of big plan, he take every small steps, and when as time went by, maybe he goes even much further.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that it's not necessarily the future goal, because I think like me and my father are very similar.
I can,
the way in which we believe in the future, and how we definitely don't get caught up too much in the weeds of what's going to happen 5-10 years down the line. It's like there's a trust, there's a belief that everything will be okay, and I think
a hope.
A real hope, not something made out of thin air, but something that was built.
Hope is very precious.
Yes.
Like the movie Hope, maybe the best thing in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess kind of going back to like
To the challenge.
challenges. I will say though that there are like some practical things that that I think most people don't consider when they talk about Hispanic immigrants is education. Like
You mean the education background?
yes, like a formal education and then just kind of like a contextual education of like society and such. I think like my parents became marketers for MLM, kind of stuff. And but one thing that I really appreciated of them doing their marketing stuff is that they would give them books to read every month. Every month they'd be reading books. And I could see from their like understanding of like people's experiences and wisdom, but like the ability to obtain knowledge, I think was so precious to them that they gave me that inspiration for myself, Yeah. And I've noticed that a lot of people don't read in general, right?
Even today, I think that even today, this is even more, everyone has a phone.
Right.
There are so many things going on.
But to actually take time to really say, I'm gonna try to improve, like most people don't do that. And especially in poor Hispanic community where you don't even have the luxury of time, because I remember my dad, before he was a chef, he used to work at like a fish packing factory, and my mom used to work at a textile factory in LA before they met each other. And like the first 2 years was just straight grinding. Like they'd live in like cockroach infested apartments and like really just awful conditions, but
so which means that maybe in the first 2 years, they came to America.
Right.
So they work for no hours.
Right.
And maybe the environment they live in is really bad.
Right.
And they literally don't have time and energy to do some self-study.
Right. And I think like I think that's also one of the hardest challenges is to find time or to make time.
How?
Right.
Where the turning point happen?
Right.
Because you are trapped in such a circle. How they jump out of that circle?
It's a really interesting story. So my dad crossed over the border to Texas, I believe, and it was a really funny thing. Border Patrol detained him, but like my dad was very faithful to God, and he was like, Lord, help me, get through this detention, right? And just luckily at the same time, there was like an incident in El Salvador where like a whole mountain, right? And so he went to LA, and I remember he told me, I don't like this place. LA is weird, like
it's a big city,
right? But in the 2000s, it was a little bit smaller. But one thing that he noted to me was that that both me and him kind of share on LA is that it feels too safe, too mediocre, too, how do I say, like comfortable. That's the word. It's a very comfortable city, especially for Hispanics, because everyone speaks Spanish there.
Because it has a big
and
Spanish community, Spanish environment here.
Right. And he detailed to me like, although there were opportunities, it just wasn't like the right kind of opportunity,
Well, then how you define right opportunity?
Right, and that's subjective. I think my dad was like, dude, I don't like the heat and I want to go somewhere that's not
much cooler.
But also he was like, man, I don't want to, work for nothing, dirt cheap, practically like $2, $5.
Got you. How long he worked in that role? Fish packing, right?
Right. Well, that was here in Washington, but he was like, I don't like this, so he called up his uncle. He's like, hey.
His uncle is back
here,
home country.
Here.
Here
in Seattle.
Okay.
And so he's like, hey, could you help me out? And he's like, yeah. So he brings him up, and that's how he gets introduced to other opportunities.
How old was him at that time?
My uncle or my
your dad?
My dad. He was like what? 20, 21?
20,
my
21.
age. Literally my age.
Imagine
me being like, hey, I'm like fresh off the boat, and
I can say your dad, kind of some part of your dad from you.
Yeah, and it's weird to think about it because when I look at the pictures, I'm like, man, this guy was
20 years
really
ago.
cool. This is just a kid, and
just like you.
yeah, just like me. And it was weird because I'm like, me doing that, me going out and traveling miles with no car, no nothing, like that.
That's hard.
That's hard
for you to imagine.
with no home, no family, no one to rely on, just himself and just like some connections that he had. It's just like
a strong feeling of isolation.
Yes, he has told me that loneliness was very
there.
There,
that's a very big thing. One of the motivation I began to have private conversation with my friends in the past 2 or 3 years is it is loneliness. Even today we have better much decent environment, but that part is still exist. Then at that moment, which means your dad and mom haven't met each other.
No, but what's really interesting? My parents they didn't know each other like very well at all actually back in El Salvador, but they met once when they were kids.
They live close to each other?
They didn't they lived close, but not like in the neighborhood, but they had
the same city?
Yeah, but for like a little while, and then my dad moved away to another city in El Salvador.
That's interesting.
And it's really it's really interesting because my mom was friends with like my auntie or whatever, or my auntie's friend or whatever, and they knew each other, but they only had glanced at each other, when they were a kid, and then
do they have impression? I don't think so.
No, my mom was like, oh, that's just some guy, Yeah,
some normal guy. Yeah, that's always girls.
Yeah,
okay, that's a normal guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my dad, actually he had come to America. He still was like seeing someone, and so like I think it's really interesting that when my dad came to Seattle and kind of like got like integrated with his relatives and stuff. My mom actually was. Oh, excuse me, hiccuping.
There it is.
But when my mom had recently come into America, she was also kind of looking for somewhere to go, right? And she didn't like LA as much either, and so she was like, I gotta leave, right?
Go north
or something like that, right? And so my mom calls like my auntie or
your dad call your uncle,
yeah,
his uncle, and your mom call her auntie
from my dad's side. So it's kind of like my uncle's sister or whatever. But
okay.
But my dad picks up the phone instead of my auntie.
At that moment, your dad lived with them?
Yeah. He lived with my.
Got you. So what's the relationship between your mom and your father's auntie?
I think they knew each other in El Salvador when they were kids, but not very like strong, but they were acquaintances.
Gotcha. They are not. It's more like friends rather than relatives.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so when my dad picks up the phone, my mom's like, "Who is it? Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, it's me, Ronald. Well, me llamo Ronald, And my mom was like,
Spanish.
Yeah, and my mom was like, "Oh, cool. Can I talk to so and so?" And he's like, "No, she's not here." He was lying, but
okay,
but
cute.
But the funny thing is, he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for someone to like take me up north and stuff, and hopefully get me somewhere." And my dad was like, "Yeah, I'll take you. I'll pay for your ride, and I'll let you go up."
How long? So at that moment, how long have your dad been in Seattle?
Probably a year.
Just 1 year.
Yeah, or maybe less than a year. Or something
okay.
Like that. Yeah.
How? The curious part. Okay.
Yeah.
Your parents, your dad even have no idea.
No, not really.
How he so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like.
It's not like you look at a girl or a boy on the street.
Right.
You feel some attractive. It's not like that. It's just a phone call.
Right. Well, I think like maybe I don't really remember very well if he like saw pictures or like
gotcha.
See her other times, but
he already know her.
Yeah.
Before
like
the
before,
phone call.
just once.
Then it makes sense. So which that your dad at this moment when he pick up the call,
Yeah.
he already have some sense.
Yeah.
Who is this
Yeah.
girl?
Right.
Oh, then it makes sense because I'm thinking about it.
Like a random chick.
Yeah, then that's real weird.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
Yeah, if he has no
Yeah.
idea who this girl is, yeah.
But
Interesting.
yeah, and the funny thing is that like after my dad was like, yeah, I'll pay for your stuff to come up, hung the phone down,
drive to LA and drive your mom and dad back.
To pay for someone to drive her up.
He didn't drive him.
No, he didn't have a car.
Okay, I guess
He didn't have a license either. But
okay.
Yeah, but the point I was gonna make is that like when he asked my auntie if she would do that, my auntie would have been like, nah,
Do what?
Pay for her to go up north to get it up to Seattle.
Got you. Well, that's boy.
Yeah. literally. That's what my dad said. He's like, son, sometimes you just gotta, go rich people, but.
Well, but the thing is that in your life,
yeah,
that's enough just to do that once.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot do that for every girl.
No, of course not. Not every girl is my mother. Like
exactly.
In that way,
exactly. Yeah, in that sense.
But,
yeah. You only need one person, the right person.
But yeah, I think like that story is really funny to me because I think
that's a very interesting story.
Because they developed their relationship once they got acquainted and started going on dates and stuff. But my mom like initially just did not want to go out with him, which is really funny. And so he just like
I heard a lot of stories.
Yeah.
At the very beginning.
Yeah, it's just like
well, this guy is just a normal guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I just think that story.
How old are they? I think this story is very interesting.
My mom is 45. My dad's 44 right now.
Oh no, I mean at that moment.
Point. Well, my dad would have been 20 and my mom 21.
Okay, basically in 20s. Yeah, I think that also because when you are younger,
right,
then maybe kind of you are willing to take more risk.
Right, and you don't really think about it.
Yeah, you don't think about too much. I think that's a very interesting point.
And I think another point to think about is from their perspective is that they were very naive, like coming.
Of course.
Super naive, like.
Of course.
And so, yeah, they were really doing some funny stuff, but.
Yeah. But when they, look back.
Yeah.
At that 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they also think, wow, that's interesting. That's so cute.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of things when you become more mature,
right,
you won't do it.
Right. You don't take crazy risks like
yeah, and
it's worth it.
Right. Who knows?
Right.
The last question about this one is that imagine if your parents will give some suggestions to the first generation immigrants. Even today, there's still a lot of immigrants, new first generation. What suggestion or advice you think they will give to them?
I think like in a lot of ways, have respect for where you are, because I think like my parents came here understanding that the privilege that they have in physically being here is not an entitlement. We're not entitled to this. And I think a lot of like new immigrants, sadly to say, feel some kind of entitlement. I think that's not Hispanic. I can't say that for all immigrants, but
of course.
Yeah. And so I think like their incessant display of respect to where they are and understand where they are is something that people need to understand, because the world is bigger than a small town.
Of course.
And so, we can't be blindsided by that. But I think another thing that my parents would say to new immigrants is to get educated. I think like just simple as that, to read, because community is a big part of Hispanic community, but I think the word is insular. Like it just kind of insulates itself. It's its own bubble. And,
I think that's also something exists in Chinese first generation or other community, right?
Yeah.
You tend to stay inside your own community. It's much safe, and also because of culture, because of language.
Yeah, and yeah, I think like the beauty in both of my parents' careers, you know, my dad being a chef and my mother like doing a house cleaning business and stuff like that, is being exposed to different cultures. You know, my mother primarily was, or still is sometimes, American, you know, upper class, white, Indian. Indian is really interesting, Asian, certain, you know, and I don't think very many Hispanic people get the opportunity to at least have a conversation or just passively view how people
Yeah,
live,
I
you know?
agree. Some position
Yeah,
give you more opportunity to expose
Right.
to different kind of people.
right. And I know that not everyone has the opportunity to have those positions, but if you know, for those who can or do, you know, para que las personas que sí pueden o no pueden, you know, they should push themselves
Well, what's the Spanish?
for those who can or can't.
Okay, so you repeat
Yeah,
the English
yeah.
as well. Okay.
Yeah, but I think you have to it's not if, it's you have to be exposed, you have to learn, because staying in the same place and doing the same things as other people ain't gonna get you anywhere. And I think this is something my dad has ingrained in my heart, is mediocrity. Don't settle for mediocrity, you know. And that's something in my heart as well, that I don't like to be the same as other people, which is not, it's a difference from being, I want to be special and unique, but it's more like I just don't want to
Find yourself.
Right. Yeah. It's like I want to be me.
Yeah, because you can be no one else except yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And we also talk about just now that we spend whole life to do one thing, find yourself, to know who you are, right? And but and I agree that maybe sometimes we need to work out of the comfort zone. We get exposed to different people, then we have some sense. Okay, others are like a mirror, right? Because we came from very different background,
Right.
and when our ideas, inspire each other, maybe we have bad understanding who I am.
Yeah.
Right. Got you. So to summarize what you mentioned, the first thing is to be respectful about the environment you are at this moment.
Right. Yeah.
And the second thing is that it's about maybe brave to work out of the environment you feel comfortable with, especially your home country's environment, and get exposed to some more diverse, different background. Any other things?
No. Well, I think got nothing.
Okay, cool. Then I think we can go to the